Bias binding is a must when you're sewing. It's super easy to make it yourself, so why should you waste your money on buying it on the store? And you can use all of your scraps to make this. I also used bias binding in my latest tutorial, which is my wrap skirt. So if you are going to start making that wrap skirt, you can go ahead and also make your own bias binding to match your skirt. So I really hope that you guys will enjoy this tutorial, and let's get started. Start by finding your scraps of fabric and choose the colors you want to work with and use cotton for the bias binding. Start with a square that's 50 by 50 centimeters. Make sure the edges are straight on grain. Fold the fabric in half from corner to corner and cut along that line. You'll now get 2 triangles. Place the 2 triangles right sides together and match the edges. Pin and sew with about a ½ centimeter seam allowance. Press the seam open. Now we're going to mark our bias strips width. Measure and draw lines every 4 centimeters across the fabric, parallel to one long edge. Once you reach the end, cut away any excess fabric if you're not able to distribute all the fabric into equally wide strips on 4 centimeters. Now here's the key step. Fold the fabric right sides together to make a tube, bringing the 2 short ends together, but don't match the lines perfectly. Instead, offset them by 1 strip, so line number 1 on one side matches what line number 2 on the other side. Pin carefully and sew the end seam. Press it open. This offset is what creates one continuous spiral instead of lots of separate loops. Start cutting along one line and keep cutting around and around until you reach the end. Next, you can go ahead and grab a bias binding tool and feed the strip through the tool right side facing upwards. Once you pull the bias strip through the tool, you're going to be able to stretch and fold at the same time, and the bias binding is being created. The sides are being folded. If you don't have a bias binding tool, you can go ahead and pin a needle into your ironing board, and you can feed the bias strip through this and start ironing. The sides will automatically fold in. Next, fold your bias binding in half and use your iron to press it flat. After this step, you're pretty much done with the bias binding. And you can go ahead and do this to all your scraps depending on how much bias binding you'll need. If you follow my exact guide, you'll end up with about 6 meters of bias binding. If you want to take it to the next level, you can go ahead and make some organizers for the bias binding. I'm just tracing around an old bias binding holder in cardboard, and then I am threading the bias binding around it. I made a bunch of bias binding one day, and now I have restocked my stash, which is super helpful and practical. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and that you will give it a try, and please let me know in the comments down below what you want me to do next. Bye!